Welcome to MidLIFE Matters, where we celebrate women's wisdom and wit. I'm Georgianne Lucier, your host, and I'm delighted to introduce today's guest, Beverly Catchpole, who is the Chief Giving Officer at Foodshare, which is located their headquarters here in Wallingford, and she has an MBA and is a certified fundraising executive. Welcome, Beverly.
Thank you so much, Georgianne. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're delighted to hear. I mean, what more is on people's minds than food and need and costs? And yes.
Absolutely.
And you've worked at Connecticut Foodshare for over 8 years.
Yes.
Please share about the programs that serve people with food insecurity. And I know we have connections here in Wallingford, in addition to the headquarters, with some organizations, because you are throughout all of Connecticut.
We are. So Connecticut Foodshare is the largest food bank in the state of Connecticut. And we have 3 facilities. One is in Wallingford, that's where our headquarters is. And that's the largest facility. It's 84,000 square feet, so it's quite large. We also have a facility in Bloomfield and in Bridgeport. And at Connecticut Foodshare, we serve over 400,000 individuals who have food insecurity in the state. And that number also includes 1 out of 8 children, which is hard to believe is happening in the state of Connecticut. And food insecurity means that someone doesn't know where their next meal is coming from. So we make sure that we take care of those people, and the way that we do that is we have a network of 500 partner agencies that we work with, which are in local community. That consists of food pantries, soup kitchens, residential and day programs, and we also have over 100 mobile pantries that goes into the areas where we don't have those food pantries and soup kitchens. And last year, we were able to serve over 40 million meals to the people of Connecticut. So it's quite a feat.
It is quite a feat. So about how many people work at Foodshare? I know you have all these partners.
We have a staff of about 120.
Okay.
And we have some openings, too.
All right. That's
Yeah.
And locally, we have Masters Manna and probably a number of other organizations
In Wallingford.
that are part of the network.
Yeah, as I said, it can be a food pantry, or it can be what was traditionally known as a soup kitchen, and also residential and day programs, so places that are shelters or have other facilities like that. Almost every organization needs food in some way to serve people who are in need, and we're there from Connecticut Foodshare.
How do people become both aware of and eligible for your services?
They can reach out to Connecticut Foodshare, and there's a process that we're going through. In fact, today we were just talking about, because of the pandemic, we had frozen bringing people on board, new agencies on board to serve. So we have a queue of 30 agencies that are that want to become members of the food bank. So we vet them, we talk to them, and we have some procedures that include rigorous food safety standards, because that's important,
Right.
And also some financial reporting requirements that we ask of our agencies. And then if they accept government food, then they have to sign up and do a little bit more work to receive that government food that we get.
Okay. And then, as I understand from speaking to you previously, you also help people maybe complete their eligibility process? I mean, explain to them how it works?
The SNAP program, what used to be called food stamps.
Okay.
And we do help people. We have people go out into the field and let people know that there are benefits available. And it's a cumbersome form that they have to fill out.
Okay.
But we do help people fill out the form and get their benefits. It's important for them to be able to know that those benefits are available.
I think you mentioned senior boxes.
We do. We have about 1,500 senior boxes. That's a federal program called CFAP, and they take the senior boxes and distribute it to seniors who are in need. That's about 35 pounds of food a month that they get, and they get a large block of cheese, and they get some pasta and some pasta sauce and peanut butter, all the staples that a senior would need. It's really an important program.
And veterans, are they a part of the group as well?
We do work with the VA hospital, and we do have mobile pantries that serve veterans in areas where there are a lot of veterans. And we're always looking to expand programming. So if anyone would like to contact us and let us know that there's a need, we'd love to chat with them and see what we could do.
Great.
Yeah.
Now, you also used some terms when we spoke that I was not familiar with. food deserts and food swamps.
Right. It sounds kind of funny, but food deserts are areas where there is not affordable and healthy food. And so we try to serve those areas through our pantries or mobile pantries. And that might be an area where it's a high density of population and there's no supermarket or farmer's market available. There might just be a bodega, perhaps, that has not healthy food.
Okay.
And a food swamp is where there's a lot of food, but it's not healthy food. So that can be a place where there's a lot of fast food restaurants, and again, no supermarket or farmer's market for people to get healthy, fresh food, including produce. So we like to look at those areas, and Feeding America, who's our partner, we're a member of Feeding America with 200 other food banks. We like to do a map the meal study to see where there's most area of need, and then we try to fill those gaps in need with our services.
Am I correct in understanding that Feeding America is the largest U.S. charity?
It is. We used to be third, and
Okay.
during the pandemic, we became the largest charity in the country. And we're one of 200 food banks. We each have our own regional territory. In fact, Connecticut Foodshare was a combination of Connecticut Food Bank and Foodshare, and we merged during the pandemic 2 years ago and became Connecticut Foodshare, and now we serve the entire state. But each Feeding America food bank has their own area where they service.
So what's the relationship like with Feeding America? So do you have certain reporting requirements?
We do.
And does money funnel through them, say through the Fed or?
So Feeding America is a charity that they have a lot of corporate relationships with very large organizations. And then what they'll do is they'll have a partnership with a large organization, and then they'll pass through opportunities for local food banks to get those funds. We also get best practices from Feeding America, and because each food bank has its own individual territory that doesn't overlap, we find that we can share a lot with other food banks and learn from them. So Feeding America also has rigorous food standards that we have to keep up for safety, reporting requirements, and it's just a wonderful organization to be a part of. It gives us so much, so we're grateful to be a member.
Oh, that's super.
Yeah.
So they're throughout the whole country.
They are.
Okay, and
There's
they
even
are
an
the
Alaska
largest?
and Hawaii food bank, which I would love to visit.
Okay, all right. So the pandemic, it peaked right up to like 500,000, and now it's
Now we're at around 400,000.
okay, which is what you were closer to pre,
We're,
right?
We are not back to pre-pandemic, but we're getting closer. However, we have seen with inflation that we're seeing more, our pantries are reporting that they're seeing more people than, so pre-pandemic we were in about 350,000, then we got up to 500,000, now we're closer to 400,000. The number pantries are reporting that the number is growing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of those trends. I mean, certainly, as I said when we were just starting here, it's on, I think, everyone's mind what's happening with food. You'll see the charts in the news showing what percent eggs, I don't know, 55% increase or something.
Absolutely.
Have you found that one trend is that people are just much more aware of this potential scarcity? I mean,
I think people really became aware of food banks during the pandemic.
okay.
We were on the news. Actually, Al Roker came to one of our mobile distribution sites and interviewed us during the pandemic. And so I think people became aware of food insecurity. As I mentioned, food insecurity was decreasing after the pandemic, but then inflation hit. So people are having to make difficult choices between paying for medicine or paying for food, or we know utility costs have gone up, gasoline prices have gone up. And so the people who struggle with food insecurity, that really, it makes a difference for them to have us be able to provide that food so they don't have to make hard decisions. Rent is going up. I mean,
Yes.
everything is really, people are feeling pressure, especially the ALICE population, which is a United Way term for people who are, we used to call this the population working poor.
Okay.
So they have jobs, but they're just not able to make ends meet, especially in a state like Connecticut where the cost
Yes.
of living is so high. So we find a lot of people from the ALICE population comes to our food bank.
You have 500 partners. I would imagine they're in different groupings, from local farms, perhaps, to Stop and Shop and Costco? Or?
Well, the partners are people who distribute the food. The
Okay.
people who donate the food
Oh, all
are
right.
local farms, Stop and Shop. We get donations from Walmart. We get donations from many different food sources, retail partners. And lots of times it's food that's about to expire.
Okay.
For example, Big Y gives us over 1 million pounds of meat a year that's just about to expire. They freeze it, and then it's good for a few more days, and we pass it out to people on the line. It's also produce that is about to, that doesn't look quite right, or sometimes, it might be produce that's too large or lumpy or not the right color, and
Not perfect.
not perfect, exactly, but it's still very nutritious and good to eat. So we get a lot of that produce too.
Do people get things to drink as well as
If we get a
food?
donation of water or
Okay.
or something healthy, we do distribute that. We try to discourage, sodas and
Right.
chips and things like that aren't very nutritious. But we do get some of those donations, and we do distribute some of that. But that's not the bulk of what we distribute. The bulk of what we distribute is produce and healthy food.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you are the chief giving officer.
I am.
And so, like a friend of mine donates monthly. How does it break out in terms of individual contributions, corporate contributions,
Actually, about half of our revenue is from individuals. So, and most of our gifts are from individuals. So we rely heavily on individual support. And that makes us a healthy organization, because we know how to steward our donors and how to cultivate them and tell them what's going on, and they, in kind, give us donations. We do get corporate gifts, and I have 2 corporate giving officers who work throughout the state. They go to all the chamber meetings, and they talk to large corporations. Some large corporations have corporate foundations, and they have grants, so I have a grant writer who does grants for us, and that's about a quarter of what we do.
Okay.
Corporations are about another quarter, and as I said, about half is from individuals.
So it really matters that people contribute.
Oh, absolutely, especially those monthly givers. It's
Yeah.
really important. We know we can count on that money if
Right.
it's monthly.
I guess a message would be encourage people to consider giving at this time.
That's always my message. I'm a
Okay.
fundraiser.
Yeah.
It's important, and I think that the more people understand about the work that we do and how we are the convener of other services. So some of the things that we provide is our wraparound services. So during the pandemic, we knew that people would come out on our mobile pantries to get food. So we were affiliated with an organization that let us do vaccines if people wanted it.
Nice.
We work with the people who do Husky throughout the state, and they can
Okay.
come out and talk to people. It's really important to do wraparound services, and we know that where there's food, people will come out, and so we have lots of partners that we work with who help us do those wraparound services for that population.
That's wonderful. So I can see why you're excited about being part of it.
I love my job. It's
Yes, it
honestly,
comes
it's
through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the work we do is so important, and for me personally, just having my own children, knowing that there are children that go hungry in this state is something I find unacceptable.
And just also, we have volunteers, I imagine, that help, right?
We have over 6,000 volunteers.
Oh my goodness, that's a big group.
And we rely on our volunteers to help us sort that food. So we gather the food from supermarkets and other retail distributors through donations. The government also gives us food through the TFAP program.
Okay.
And so we need volunteers to help us sort that food, because we'll get giant cases of tomatoes, which we can't hand out. We have to put them in bags. We have to pick out ones that aren't quite right. And so we need to sort that food, and we rely on our volunteers to do that. People do shifts twice a day, every day in Wallingford, several days a week in Bridgeport, and in Bloomfield. So
A neighbor of ours, one of the daughters has a food background, and I know she's been volunteering. She's in between jobs, so that's just terrific.
we have an 80-year-old who comes in almost every day. It's incredible. His name is
Great.
Ed.
Yeah. Okay. Shout out to Ed.
Yeah, shout out to Ed, absolutely.
Great. Well, let's talk about how you came to be part of such an important organization, and you started your career on Wall Street.
I did.
And then you had several interesting jobs with major corporations. And so how about some insights about that, the rigor of tax accounting and being involved with the shipments of tulip bulbs from Holland.
Yeah, I was telling you about that, right. I'm from Philadelphia, and I went to school at the University of Rochester, and I got my degree in economics, and then I was ready for the big city. So I applied to jobs in banking, because I thought that was sort of a natural progression in Boston and Philadelphia and Washington, D.C., and I got a job in New York at Irving Trust, which was a bank right on Wall Street in the corporate tax department.
And you had arrived.
And I was very excited.
Yeah.
And so I did a corporate tax for Irving Trust was a tax in all 50 states. So I did state tax returns. I even worked with Mexico because it was an international return I had to fill out. And that was exciting. And I decided that I wanted to get my MBA. And it was a new field called information systems and data and computers. I'm really dating myself, but that's what was happening. So I started to go to school at night. Then I changed jobs to Solomon Brothers, which was an investment banking firm on Wall Street again. And I worked in the conference planning department, which sort of sparked my interest in the work that I do now with events and planning events for corporations. I worked there. I finished my MBA. Then I worked for KLM Airlines, which was a fantastic job. They needed some automation of the accounting system for the belly of the aircraft. So people fly on the top of the aircraft, and then the bottom of the aircraft is cargo. And they didn't have an automated system for that. So I helped work on the cargo accounting system in the belly of the aircraft, and that was a lot of fun too. I traveled to Holland once a week, and then I got married and had children, and that was not going to be possible anymore. To travel to Holland once a week,
or anywhere else once a week. Right.
So that was the end of that. I decided to be a stay-at-home mom, and luckily I was able to do that, and I wanted to do that, and sort of that was the end of my corporate career.
That phase, right?
Yeah.
You have 4 sons, I understand.
Do.
And then as the last one went to kindergarten?
Yes.
You said, okay, 15 years, I'm back.
Yeah. I wanted to re-enter the workforce. And when I did that, I decided that I did not want to go back into the rigor of a corporate life. I was living at Stanford at the time. I didn't want to travel into the city because that's a 2-hour commute to get to Wall Street from Stanford.
Okay.
So that was not practical. So I looked at what I had been doing in that 15 years besides raising my children, and I was always volunteering at local church and then at the children's school. And I was always in fundraising because I'm not afraid to ask for money.
Okay.
So that was sort of the job that everyone put me into, or treasurer, one of the two. I looked at that and I said, what would be a good career move for me that will take me to the end of my career? And so I decided on being a fundraiser. And that's how I got into the next chapter of fundraising.
Is that when you went directly to Foodshare, or did you work at some other places?
My first job was a very beginning job at the Bruce Museum in Greenwich as doing data entry. I was a development assistant. I was the lowest level of development work that there is.
Put the ego right back out in the parking lot, right?
Absolutely. Yep. But I knew I wanted to do it, and I learned a lot there. That was a wonderful place. And then I got an offer from one of my children's schools to run their annual fund. So I needed to learn quickly about fundraising. I had always been a volunteer for the annual fund, but I didn't know how to run an annual fund program. Luckily, I had wonderful women mentors who helped me. I went to as many webinars and conferences as I possibly could. And then I worked at Laurelton Hall, raising money for a capital campaign there for the turf field that they were building. And then I saw the job at Foodshare. They needed a capital campaign to help build the warehouse in Wallingford. And I applied there, and I've been there ever since.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
So you've fit a lot in terms of different aspects of life and, being able to zig and zag, right?
I think it's important to be able to like what you do. And I loved working in corporate. I loved being a stay-at-home mom, and now I love being a fundraiser. So I think that's important to really enjoy whatever you're doing.
And people may not be familiar, as I wasn't, with what the Certified Fundraising Executive
credential
is.
Yeah, so that is rigorous. It's sort of like an SAT. It's 200 multiple choice questions, and you have to study they give you, I think I studied about 8 textbooks, and you really have to understand all aspects of fundraising, from planned giving and all those different kinds of vehicles that people can give to you through their bequests and trusts, to corporate development, to running events, to annual fund campaigns, and it really is the broad spectrum of all fundraising, and it prepared me for my current job as chief of fundraising and managing a team of 12.
I think you shared with me that really is your theory base that you rely on every day, right? You build on that.
Absolutely. I think it helps build your confidence to know that you have been exposed to and understand all the different aspects of fundraising, because diversification of revenue streams is one of the most important things that we do. So we're a healthy organization because we get money from corporate, from foundations, from individuals, but also we solicit people through direct mail, we do digital, we do all kinds of different solicitation methods. It's really important to have that broad base to understand that in order to be a healthy organization, you have to diversify the revenue streams. You cannot rely on just one government grant to keep you healthy as an organization.
So what are some of the key success factors for a giving officer? Certainly not being afraid to ask people for money.
Right.
Okay, but there's probably other qualities.
Absolutely. It's funny that you asked me that, because my department is made up of so many different kinds of people depending on the work that they do.
Okay.
So my frontline fundraisers are, you can beat them with a stick, they're not going to stop. They're relentless, they're extroverts, they are goal oriented, and they have wild, wonderful personalities, and they can talk to anyone about anything.
Okay.
Then I have the back of the house people, we call them, who process the gifts, and they're my introverts, and they like to make sure that the gifts are entered properly, that the donors are happy with the work, but they're not out there, knocking on doors or asking for money like the frontline fundraisers are. Then I have someone who writes grants, who loves homework, loves to dig down deep and learn facts, and she's a wonderful writer. And then I have an event person who's all about parties.
Oh, okay.
So it really, and then the corporate who are out there shaking hands and passing out business cards. So it's all different kinds of people that work in the giving department.
Someone watching may say, gee, I never even knew that, and they might pursue one angle there.
There's all kinds of people in the giving department, and really that's my job as a manager, to make sure that I understand what floats their boat, what they're good at, and give them the tools they need to do their job.
That sounds super. Let's talk a little bit about your interests. You're an avid pickleball player.
I am. I've been playing since 2018, and I love it.
All right.
Yeah. I live in Milford, and they built pickleball courts in 2018, and I signed up for classes because I thought it might be fun. And nobody knew what pickleball was. There were 3 people in the whole town who signed up for these courses, to learn how to play pickleball. I'd always played tennis, but it sounded like a good idea. And I met some wonderful women through that. I have a group of 8 that I'm playing with now. We're getting excited. Season's about to start soon, so we're getting all worked up about that. And I met a woman there who was an usher at the Schubert Theater, and she told me that that was a possibility too. So now I do that, and sometimes we go together to shows. Sometimes I go by myself, and I always meet fascinating people there, and I get to see the shows at the Schubert. So it's a win-win.
And what all is involved with being an usher?
You sign up, and then you do a training course to learn about the way that the seats are laid out in the theater. Then once a month they open up the whatever's playing for that month, and you just sign up, and you show up and you show people where their seats are, and then you stand in the back and watch the show.
And are people generally gracious and thankful for your assistance?
Absolutely. I even had a gentleman give me a tip one time, and I said, I'm a volunteer. You can have the program for free. It's fine. It's a wonderful way to get out there and see Broadway shows. And the director at the Schubert Theater is new this year, and he's bringing so many diverse programs there. I've really seen some amazing things. So
super.
Wonderful.
That's wonderful. And let's talk about reflecting on where we are in our journey and thinking back. And what advice would you give your younger self?
At 25, I was living in Greenwich Village and working on Wall Street. And I would tell my 25-year-old self to just enjoy every minute of it. You're single, it's fun, enjoy the city, and take advantage of it. I used to go to the Metropolitan Museum every Tuesday night because it was free.
Okay.
I would just say take advantage of everything that you can there. 40, I had all my children.
Okay.
And I was a stay-at-home mom. And I would tell myself not to worry about getting back into the workforce, that things were going to work out.
Okay.
And to just use my skills, think about what I enjoyed doing, and not to worry about the third chapter, which is what I'm doing right now.
Okay.
And I love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite quote or mantra?
I think Malcolm Forbes said, it's never too late to learn. And I really embrace that at all stages of my life. I think as long as you're learning and doing new things, I think you're going to be fine.
Wonderful. Okay, that's very encouraging, I'm sure, for everyone that's watching. So thank you so much, Bev, and I just look forward to learning more about Foodshare as we go down the road, and it just sounds like such an important endeavor.
Well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
And it was a pleasure.
And please tune in to hear other fascinating women on future segments of MidLIFE Matters. Georgianne Lucier, your host, and thank you for joining us.